fire-breathing dragons, witches, and bloody battles for the Iron Throne. We know a little something about the Game of Thrones, but there's a lot we don't know, especially a proper backstory for the mysterious Targaryens. Well, House of the Dragon will hopefully shed some light on this wild family. In this video, we discuss some juicy insights into the season, and with insider gossip, we head towards the premiere of the show, prepared and super excited. First up, think Game of Thrones. But also, not really. There's a lot in the air about the House of the Dragon, and so far, everything has been a pretty well-kept secret. No one's really sure how or what will happen, but what we do know from KG interviews with showrunners has us on the edge of our seats. In an exclusive interview with Digital Spy, Game of Thrones makeup artist Barrie Gower spilled the beans about his work on the show and its spin-off, House of the Dragon. He said that the show will be set in the same world as its predecessor, but at the same time, it's also going to be completely different. Locations, landmarks, and names might be familiar, but Gower promises that it's going to be something we haven't seen with Game of Thrones. A whole new story, set years before the adventures of our beloved characters from Game of Thrones. Sounds mysterious, but the best part about the House of the Dragon is that the novels are complete. That's right, this time we don't have to deal with the fate of a terrible series conclusion as we had with Game of Thrones, because the showrunners have access to a series that has a complete storyline and a conclusion. This way, they have the structural foundation upon which they can build the world of House of the Dragon, rather than winging it and hoping for the best. Next, the writing of the show can rival Shakespeare's. Going back to Gower, he teased some more information about the show, making the screenwriting nerds among us get all excited for what the show has to offer. The trailer opened with the poignant, "What is this brief mortal life if not the pursuit of legacy?" leaving a trail of goosebumps. If the rest of the series has writing just as hard-hitting, we're in for a wild ride. In fact, Gower's praises for the writing support this assumption, because in an interview with Digital Spy, he was all praises, acknowledging the effort and talent of those who were hard at work behind the camera. He said, "The scripts are incredible. They're really incredible, and it's going to be very exciting to see how that's received. But it's really well written, and there are some fantastic stories in there." That's all I can say, really, about that. Well, if the writing in Game of Thrones is anything to go by, we're sure that the House of the Dragon is going to have us dissolving into puddles of emotion in one scene, while shaking with rage in the next. Next up, George R.R. Martin's stamp of approval. Love him for creating one of the most elaborate and engrossing literary worlds to have ever existed, or hate him for how slowly he writes. Everyone has to admit that the television version of Game of Thrones and the House of the Dragon would never exist without him. So when he drops a few hints about the upcoming show, we're going to listen in, according to a recent blog post of his. Side note, but we think it's so adorable that the only way Martin communicates with fans is through a WordPress blog. But anyway, according to a recent post, he hinted at a lot more depth and nuance to the character King Viserys Targaryen, as he is played by actor Paddy Considine in the show. This is in comparison to the way Martin wrote Targaryen's character in the book series, which in his opinion doesn't contain even half of the depth and tragic majesty that Considine manages to inculcate within the king on the show. Seeing how all showrunners seem to be gushing over the writing and the acting, we're both excited for and dreading the emotional intensity of this show. And now that we've talked about the actors giving life and personality to their characters, wait till we tell you about the dragons. For a lot of us, the three named dragons and their powerful dragon mother were the stars of HBO's Game of Thrones. If anyone was missing the winged reptilian action, don't despair, because George R.R. Martin went on the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of podcast and promised there's a lot more where that came from, specifically 17 more. According to his interview, things are going to get wild in the dragon universe. Not only are there going to be more fire-breathing lizards, but each and every one of them is going to have a distinct personality, one that matches, or at the very least, complements the personality of their writers. This change from Game of Thrones brings the prequel closer to its source material, because the dragons in the books also have unique and developed personalities with different color schemes, making them instantly recognizable. Get ready to pick a favorite. We know we can't wait. Next up, we see how the teaser trailer for the House of the Dragon stays true to showrunner Miguel Sapochnik's promise that things will be very different, but very similar to what fans know and love. Look, when the teaser first dropped, it wouldn't have been a lie to say that a lot of us let out a childlike squeal. It felt like Christmas Day, and we're getting all the presents we'd asked Santa for, in the form of a teaser trailer for the House of the Dragon, of course. There were a lot of expectations for this trailer, especially since showrunner Sapochnik had promised that the most important thing for the cast, crew, crew and writers was to pay homage to Game of Thrones, respect and acknowledge what it did to bring Westeros to life, but to also, in their own ways, do something new, complementing rather than reinventing, basically. And from the first glimpse of the show, we think they've succeeded. The same dark, brooding color palette, the emotional strife, everything that made Game of Thrones a dramatic success, packaged in a new storyline, one that gives us further insight into the mysterious, political, and social realm of Westeros that we are first introduced to in Game of Thrones. By focusing on one family, we think there's a lot of potential for understanding why and how the Targaryens turned out the way they did, and why we can't wait to see how the story unfolds. Next, we go back to George R.R. Martin's thoughts on the series, since he's the only one willing to share them. We've seen how enthusiastic the writer has been about the characters and the dragons, but what does he think about the series overall? Well, that question can probably be answered when we take into account what he has to say about the rough cuts that he's had the privilege to see of House of the Dragon's first episode. Not gonna lie, we're feeling more than a tiny bit jealous. Oh well, those are the perks of writing the series. He can't wait to see House of the Dragon on the screen either, saying that the rough cut of the first episode exceeded any expectations he had, with showrunners Miguel Sapochnik and Ryan Condal pulling no punches when it came to bringing the series to life on the screen. He promises it to be dark, powerful, and visceral, the perfect trifecta that's needed to create an epic fantasy TV series. Can August come already? We're impatiently waiting. And now, we take a closer look at the teaser trailer for the House of the Dragon. It tells us a lot about the direction the show is heading in, dropping a pretty significant hint about its protagonist. This was one of those blink and you'll miss it moments, but since we have nothing better to do than obsess over the next addition to Westerosian law, it was a pretty huge discovery to make. We're talking about the necklace Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen wears in the trailer, of course. At first glance, it doesn't seem that important. It's just a piece of ceremonial jewelry, right? Well, we think it is much more than that, especially when we notice the placement of the symbols on it. They're the different sigils of the multiple ruling houses in the kingdom, with Targaryen in the center, followed by a fish for House Tully to its right, and the symbol for House Martell appearing at the back. Considering that politics and dressage are incredibly important to Westerosian lore, we can safely assume that the necklace, and Rhaenyra wearing it, is a sign that she was considered as successor to the throne, and therefore the ruler of all these houses. How does that pan out? Well, I guess we're just gonna have to wait and find out. And that's a wrap for this video. What do you think? Which of these teasers is making you the most excited for the show? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.